There's a moment in every person's life when the ones who are supposed to love you the most become the ones who hurt you the deepest. For me, that moment came when my parents burned my acceptance letters. I remember that moment like it was yesterday. Cold, biting air of that winter evening still fresh in my mind. The flames licked the paper, crackling with an almost malicious hunger, as the letters I had worked so hard to earn were consumed by the fire. I could feel the heat on my face, but it wasn't the warmth I expected, it was the scorching burn. Of betrayal. My dreams, my future, turned to ash in front of my eyes. I stood frozen, unable to comprehend what was happening. It was my mother who started the fire. Her hands shook, but not out of regret. There was no remorse in her actions. Just fury, pure, unadulterated anger. She stared at the burning papers as if they were nothing more than waste. I could feel the sting of her gaze as it bore into me. She didn't look at me like a daughter anymore. She looked at me like a stranger. "You don't need these," she said. Her voice sharp, cold, and final. "These letters, these dreams of yours, none of them matter." I'd been accepted to multiple universities, prestigious ones I'd poured my heart and soul into. Every late night of studying, every sacrifice, every moment of doubt and fear had led to that one moment when I received those letters, proof that my hard work hadn't been in vain. But none of that mattered to her. It was never about what I wanted. It was about what she wanted, what they wanted. For years, they had mapped out my life for me. The career path, the future, everything had been preordained in their minds. Their plans didn't include my dreams. My desires had no place in their perfect little world. I was nothing more than a tool to them, a means to an end. I remember the days when I'd been their pride, when my achievements were a reflection of their own success. They showered me with praise, took pictures, spoke of my future with glistening eyes, and made it clear that I was their legacy. I had been their golden child, the one they boasted about to family and friends, their investment into a future that would bring them glory. I never questioned their love because I believed their love was conditional on my conformity, on my ability to fit into their expectations. But now that love felt like a lie. A beautifully wrapped lie that I'd been foolish enough to believe. I had always been their obedient child. I never questioned their decisions. I followed their instructions, bent my desires to suit their vision of my life. I thought that one day, after all their sacrifices and struggles, they would finally allow me to chase my own dreams. But I was wrong. That was never part of the plan. Their dreams for me were all that mattered, and any thought of me having my own path was seen as a rebellion. When my mother dropped the last of the acceptance letters into the flames, I could feel my heart breaking. It wasn't just paper being destroyed, it was the destruction of my future, my chance at independence, my chance at becoming the person I was meant to be. I didn't know what to say. What could I possibly say in that moment? There was nothing left to say. My trust in them shattered, leaving me standing there, lost. I could feel a cold, empty void spreading within me, consuming everything. My vision blurred as tears welled up in my eyes, but I fought them back. I would not show them my weakness. I couldn't let them see how much they had broken me, but then, in the back of my mind, a small voice whispered, no. This wasn't how it was going to end. This wasn't how they were going to win. I couldn't let them strip away everything I had worked for. There was one letter they didn't find. Had been careful. I needed it away in the back of my desk, tucked deep within the pages of an old journal. The one I used to write in when I was younger. It wasn't much, but it was everything I had left. The one piece of evidence that my dreams weren't gone. That I still had a chance. As I stood there, watching the fire consume the last remnants of my future, something inside me clicked. It wasn't just heartbreak I was feeling, it was rage. A burning, seething rage that I never experienced before. The betrayal was too deep, too painful. I had trusted them. I had given them everything. And in return, they had taken everything from me. I had to be smart. I couldn't let them know I still had that letter. If they knew, they would destroy it too. But I wasn't going to just let them win. I would fight for my future, for the life that had been stolen from me. I would play their game, pretend that I had given up, pretend that I was defeated. But inside, I was already planning. I was already moving forward. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. I went through the motions, played the role of the obedient child, never letting on that I was anything but broken. But every day, that letter in my desk, hidden away from their prying eyes, was the only thing that kept me going. I started to see the cracks in their facade. My parents were trying to control me with their love, their manipulation, their expectations. But what they didn't realize was that with each passing day, I was growing stronger. I was no longer the helpless, dependent child they had molded me into. I was becoming someone else. Someone they wouldn't recognize. The manipulation was subtle at first. The way they tried to guilt-trip me into staying on their path. The way they promised that everything would be better if I just listened to them, followed their orders. Babe, made me feel small, insignificant, and incapable of making my own decisions. They convinced me that my dreams were nothing more than childish fantasies. But the more they pushed, the more I fought back internally. I began to question every decision, every word, every look. How long had they been manipulating me? How many times had they used me to get what they wanted, while I had sacrificed my own desires for the sake of their happiness? The more I thought about it, the more I realized how deep the betrayal went. It wasn't just about the acceptance letters. It was about everything they had done to control my life, to dictate my every move, my every thought. They had never seen me as an individual. To them, I was nothing more than a tool to be used. Remember one moment in particular. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was sitting in the living room staring at the remnants of the burnt letters. My father walked in, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. He sat down beside me, trying to act like everything was normal. He spoke in his calm, measured voice, as if nothing had happened. We've made arrangements for your future. Trust. This is the right path for you. Trust us. Those words sent a chill down my spine. I had trusted them my whole life, and this is what it had gotten me. I had never felt more alone. But it also gave me something I hadn't realized I still had. A choice. I didn't have to accept their plan. I didn't have to follow their rules. And I wouldn't, but the hardest part was yet to come. I had to make a decision. Could I live with the consequences of defying them? Could I live with the guilt, the pain, the sense of betrayal that was now so deeply ingrained in me? The answer was yes. I would take my future back. No matter what it cost me. I had no choice anymore. The plan was already starting to form in my mind, piece by piece, like a puzzle slowly coming together. The revenge wasn't going to be swift. Nor would it be easy, but it would be calculated. I would make them regret the day they tried to destroy my dreams, but there was a part of me that hesitated, a part of me that was still attached to them, still yearning for their approval. The emotional tug of war was exhausting, but I knew one thing for certain. If I didn't take action now, I would lose everything. I had to be strong no matter the cost, and so, with that acceptance letter still hidden, I made my decision. It was time to fight back. The story wasn't over. It had only just begun. Months passed after the moment I decided to take back control, but my feelings didn't fade as I thought they might. Instead, each passing day seemed to amplify them, amplify the anger, the hurt, the frustration. I didn't speak about it. I didn't confront them. But every time I looked at my parents, something in my chest tightened. It was like a pressure that wouldn't relent, building until I could barely breathe. When my father said those words to me, "We've made arrangements for your future. Trust us. This is the right path for you." I felt the last of my trust snap, like a thread that had been holding me together for years. Trust us. They had taken everything from me. Everything. And now they were asking for trust. But trust had been destroyed in a single instant, and now all that was left was the weight of their betrayal. I could still hear my mother's voice in my head, cold and indifferent. "You don't need these." Her words echoed, drowning out the sound of my heart breaking in the flames. She didn't even consider the possibility that I might want something different, something of my own. She only saw her version of my life, the one she had carefully crafted in her mind for years. But it wasn't me. It was a vision of what I was supposed to be, a shadow of someone else's dreams. And yet, despite all that, despite everything they had done, I still found myself haunted by flashes of the love they once gave me. Flashes of the days when they held me in their arms and whispered promises of a bright future. My mother holding me close, her warm embrace as if I was her whole world. My father with his firm hand on my shoulder telling me that I was destined for greatness, that I could achieve anything. Those moments had felt so real, so genuine. But now they were just hollow memories, cracks in the illusion of a perfect family dot. It was the weight of that love, now twisted and broken, that kept me tethered to them even as I knew they were poisoning my life. How could they have done this? How could they have taken away everything I worked for, just because it didn't fit into their narrow view of what my life should look like? But as much as I resented them, I couldn't deny that I had been their prisoner for far too long. I had been living their dream, not my own. My mother had told me that I didn't need those acceptance letters, that I didn't need those universities. I remember the rage that boiled inside me when I heard her say those words. The feeling of being silenced, of being told that I wasn't enough, of my dreams not mattering. The betrayal I felt was beyond anything I had ever experienced. It was like someone had pulled the rug from beneath me, leaving me scrambling for balance. And in that chaos, I felt something inside me, something dangerous. It wasn't just pain. It was anger. It was a fire that had been smoldering for far too long. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let this slide. I couldn't just walk away from everything I had worked for, everything that was mine. The acceptance letter, the last piece of my dreams, was hidden safely, but that wasn't enough. I needed to make them feel the weight of what they had done to me. I needed to show them that I was no longer their puppet. But even as I made this decision, I felt a sharp pang of guilt, something I hadn't anticipated. There was a small part of me that still loved them, still wanted to be the obedient child, still wanted to hear their approval. The thought of confronting them, of tearing apart the last vestiges of our family, made my chest tighten with dread. Could I live with the consequences of my actions? Was I really ready to face the truth of who they had become? The answer was yes, but it didn't come easily. The first stirrings of the plan began in my mind late at night, when the house was quiet, when I could think without distraction. I would have to be careful. I would have to be strategic. I couldn't let them know what I was planning. The letter, my ticket to a future they couldn't control, had to stay hidden. But there was so much more to do. I began observing my parents more closely. The way they interacted with me, the way they spoke. The subtle manipulations, the ways they would guilt-trip me into believing that what they had planned for me was the only path. My father, always calm, always calculated, knew how to make me feel small. He knew how to make me doubt myself. My mother, on the other hand, was more emotional, more direct. But it was all a performance. It was all designed to keep me in their grasp. I started to notice the little things. The way my father would pull strings behind the scenes, making phone calls, securing my future without even consulting me. How he would slip into my room while I was sleeping, moving things around, changing my plans without asking. How my mother would say one thing and do another, always expecting me to conform to her will. They didn't trust me. They never had. I knew they were trying to protect me, but it wasn't protection, it was control. It was about keeping me in their world, a world where they made all the decisions. And that was something I couldn't accept anymore. I wasn't a child anymore. I wasn't a puppet. I had my own life, my own future, and they had no right to take that away from me. As the days passed, I began to realize just how deeply I had been manipulated, how every decision I had made in the past had been shaped by their expectations. I was living a life that wasn't mine. I was living a life that was suffocating me. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I had been a prisoner at my own home, but no longer. I began to prepare. I would get out. I would leave. But I would do it on my own terms. The revenge wasn't going to be hasty. It wasn't going to be petty. It was going to be calculated, and it would hurt them the way they had hurt me. I would make sure they knew what it felt like to lose something precious. I would make them see that they could never take my dreams away from me. Every night I went over the plan in my mind. The more I thought about it, the more precise it became. I knew what I had to do, but it wasn't going to be easy. I would have to confront them, show them that I was no longer the obedient child they had molded. And when I did, it would break them. The first step was simple. I would leave. I would take the letter, my one remaining link to the life I had worked for, and leave. But it wasn't just about leaving. It was about making them see me. It was about making them realize that I'd become someone they couldn't control. I could feel the rage building inside me. It was like a beast clawing its way out, demanding to be unleashed, but there was more to it than just anger. There was sorrow too. The sorrow of realizing that my parents had never seen me as their equal, that they had always seen me as a means to an end. The sorrow of understanding that the love I had once felt was nothing more than an illusion, but even as the sorrow threatened to drown me, there was determination. I would rise above it. I would be stronger than they ever gave me credit. F.O. And I would make them see me for the first time. The night I decided to leave, I stood in front of the mirror staring at my reflection. For the first time in years, I didn't recognize the person looking back at me. I had been broken, but now I was different. Stronger. Determined. I wasn't the person I had been. I was someone who would take control of her future. No matter what it took. As I gathered my things, the weight of the decision pressed down on me. But there was no going back. There could never be any going back. The house was silent as I left, the only sound the soft rustle of the letter in my pocket, hidden from their eyes. I had taken the first step towards my future, and I wasn't going to let anything stop me. But as I walked away from everything I had ever known, I couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest part was still ahead of me. I had taken control. But would they let me go so easily? Would they fight back? Would they even understand? I didn't know. But I was ready to find out. The journey had just begun, and the road ahead would be filled with challenges, but I was ready for whatever came. Next.